Decode that with Sandip Sabharwal, who's joining us on the show. Sandeep, hi, good to be speaking with you. Well, the reported numbers looked quite weak, but then later we got to understand that there's some one-off in the numbers, and barring that, the margins have come in line with expectation at 12.9%, and the volume, though, continues to be a bit muted. What's your view on Maruti now?
I think Maruti is in a new resurgence cycle where their new products are doing well. They are moving up the value chain, and the exports also expected to do well for them. And the overall, given all of this, the overall revenue and margin picture looks to be pretty decent. So, like you said rightly, there were some one-offs in this result, so that impacted the performance of this quarter. So overall, Maruti is well placed. Valuations are still not at a stage where we can say they are excessive. And after spending a lot of time in the 9,000 to 10,000 range, based on consistent performance, the stocks moved higher. So I would think that long-term prospects still look good. Near-term, the stock could be range bound possibly, and then give returns through this year. So overall, I would be optimistic still on Maruti.
And I guess that optimism would continue and only getting stronger now for ICICI Bank, especially given the news flow, Sandeep, around the rest of the private banking majors, be it HDFC Bank's earnings or the latest fiasco coming in with Kotak. I guess that makes the case for ICICI Bank only stronger.
Yeah, and as the results have come out, it's very apparent that HDFC is facing issues of its own. If you see results of Axis Bank or if you see results of ICICI Bank, many of the larger private sector banks still continue to do well on a consistent basis. So uh, the NIMs are in a decent range, and the comment from the management that NIM decline has bottomed, I think that's a decent guidance. So even if they give grow credit at 15, 17%, I think a 15% plus kind of earning growth picture looks likely, unless and until NPAs tick up, which doesn't seem to be likely at this stage. So ICICI Bank performance has been the best. It continues, and to that extent, it's become the premium valuation bank in India now. And I would think that it should sustain for now.
In for now, of course, the GIFT Nifty is implying that the open is going to be 100 points higher, maybe closer to that 22,650 range. But I also wanted your view, Kunal, regarding AU Small Finance Bank and Jana Bank, if you have enough history, because the news flow which has happened with respect to RBI releasing the regulation for conversion from a small finance bank to universal bank will keep a couple of these stocks in limelight today. But on the charts, what would be your suggestion, Kunal?
So I think AU Small Finance Bank apparently has been an underperformer. The stock I think has corrected from 800 levels to sub 600 just about till last week, except for that last couple of days of the price rally. We've seen the stock coming back towards 630, 640 mark. But then broadly, I think the stock has been an underperformer. It's still trading below its key moving averages, and the stock. I remember, I think even at a point where in mid 2023, when the Bank Nifty was going into a very strong uptrend, the stock continued to remain into a range 600 to 700 broadly was the range at that point of time for the stock price. So it doesn't come as a surprise that the stock is underperforming this time around. Would not be too much gung ho about the stock patterns over the near term. But I think maybe the stock would just about try and consolidate into this 150 point range for some more time. JSFB, Jana Small Finance Bank, that's an interesting name because, of course, the chart history is limited. But then in the last 1 month, the stock has picked up quite well. Now trading, I think, about that 500 plus mark. In the last 1 month or so, the stock has recovered and rallied more than 15% plus. And that too with a very strong bout of candlestick formation. It's more of consistent uptrend which you've seen for the stock. So don't track it very regularly. But then looking at the charts as such, I expect that this uptrend would probably continue.
Sandeep, what to do with the IT pack? Tech Mahindra, for instance, has given an outlook for FY27. That's what the street has liked, and there are a couple of upgrades as well coming in on the stock right now. Do you think one would believe in the FY27 story from Tech Mahindra, or do you think this entire sector is best given a skip right now?
So at this point of time, I would like to skip because the growth trends don't seem to be visible, and most of the managements are, I think, excessively bullish on what margins they can deliver. Because in any industry, and if you see where if the uh, underlying growth doesn't pick up, then it's very tough to improve margins. So I think that remains another risk. The only silver lining has been that the potential order booking for future execution for most of the companies has been good. So at some stage, growth will revive. Doesn't seem likely for the next 6 to 9 months at least. So, and now, if someone wants to play the FY27 story, whether they should be doing it now or later, because why should the stock start performing now when they are not exactly cheap also? So I think that's the stage right now IT is in. Downside could be limited to 5 to 10% for most of the larger IT companies, but then I don't see much upside also.
So the downside is limited, but not much upside as well. Sandeep, I want your view on Apollo Hospitals as well, but let me first take it across to Shrishti. Shrishti, it's a fairly complicated deal that Apollo Hospitals has announced, but on a net-net basis, what's your understanding? Is it going to be positive for the stock move today or not really?
Well, yes, analysts are finding out to be positive for Apollo Hospitals. Why? So, because finally that deal is through where fundraise for 24/7 is done. But a surprise coming in where the company has also announced that they're going to be getting the promoter-owned pharma distributor, wholesale pharma distributor company that is named KMID into a combined entity. So, Apollo Healthco as well as KMID International will be combined into one. And in this, Advent is going to invest 2,475 crores for a stake of 12.1%. Now, the company has set aggressive target for this combined entity. Let me tell you, for the 9 months of FY24, the revenue stands close to 10,208 crores. But in the next 3 years, they want to scale the annualized revenue to 25,000 crores. Other than that, from a current margin, EBITDA margin of 1.5%, they want to take it up to 7 to 8%, and they're going to use the growth, some of the growth capital for Apollo Healthco. They're going to be converting and taking some stake from the promoters of the KMID International. So all in all, analysts are finding it to be quite a positive deal for Apollo Hospital, because they are saying that it is a structurally positive deal despite lower valuation that has been assigned to Apollo Healthco, because they were anticipating Apollo Healthco valuation earlier close to 22,000 crores. But in this particular deal, that is valued close to 14,000 crores. So a lower valuation has been assigned, but they see multiple positive from the proposed transaction, which could outweigh the negatives. They're also saying that the consolidation with KMID could address the long-standing investor concern related to the related party transaction in Apollo Health Group. And other than that, assuming that 2,000 crore of EBITDA in the next 3 years, Apollo Healthco can get an EV of 40,000 to 50,000 crores, and that is also another positive. Given the market bias for profitable and dominant retail franchise in India, there could be upside to these valuations estimate as well. So all in all, a good deal coming in for Apollo Hospitals. Back to you.
Right. Sandeep, have you been tracking Apollo Hospitals and especially this very complicated fundraise?
Yeah, Apollo Hospitals, of course. And I think this fundraise is positive because I think you get in growth capital from an external party without excessive dilution. But the valuations of Apollo Hospital largely factor this in, because valuations are quite high at this stage. So I would think that the market reaction should be muted in my view.
So that's about Apollo Hospitals. But Sandeep, what's the view on BSE? That could very well be the stock of the day on the downside today, given the regulatory overhang and the lack of clarity whether the company will be able to take a price hike or not now.
I haven't followed that story actually.
Okay, no worries about that. But Naresh, on the charts, because this stock has been doing very well for itself over the last 1 year, do you see that this, perhaps the stock price has stopped out? There could be a sharp reversal. Anything on the charts?
For this chart of
BSE.
BSE, the stock has rallied strongly. A correction from here on would actually be a buying opportunity. The trend has been strong for the last 1.5 years. it gave a breakout about 2600 odd levels. So a retest of 2600, 2800 would be a zone where one could actually look at it as a re-entry point. Uh, unless it doesn't correct up to that area, the risk reward is not great because after the breakout, the possible targets are done. So a little bit of a pause uh, or a correction to 2600, 2800. So I would be waiting out for a correction to actually look at it as a buying opportunity.
Sandeep, what about some of these turnaround banks? And the earnings are kind of reflecting that this quarter. RBL, for instance, wherein the deposit growth is the highest in about 12 quarters. Yes Bank, lower provisioning, tax write back, which has clearly aided profitability for them.
As such, for which warrants us to change the view significantly because RBL, the NPA uptick is also seen. So I would be skeptical of these banks, especially in a tight liquidity scenario. So deposit gain might have been there, but the margin squeeze, which has ended for most of the larger banks, could still continue for some of the smaller ones.
Taken. Kunal, what's the chart check suggest on a Yes Bank? Because that's clearly in news flow today. Apart from earnings, there are other reports doing round as well. And India Bulls Real Estate, because while the stock has been on an uptrend, the fundamental data that we're getting on the Q4 booking suggests that it's down 64% year on year. Which way will this stock react, you believe?
I think India Bulls Real Estate, I'll start off with that. I would probably expect that the stock has now shifted its base significantly higher. So in this last 2 months of price action, what was earlier happening is that the stock used to take a lot of resistance closer to 120, 125. In fact, there were 3 attempts towards that 125 mark for India Bulls Real Estate broadly, and the support for the stock was almost 100, 105 odd points, which means a volatility band of almost 20% to 25%. That's quite a steep for stock like India Bulls Real Estate. Of course, the real estate sector we've seen historically remains to be one of the high beta pockets. But then post that breakout of 125, the stock has moved towards 140, 145 kind of a band, which it tested recently. I believe even if there's a corrective phase, that 125 mark could probably act as a support for the stock price. So it's about now playing the ranges for a stock like India Bulls Real Estate. Maybe 125 could act as a support, and on the upside we could see now 145 to 150 as a fresh band of resistance. Yes Bank, on the other hand, could be an interesting case for potential breakout. Now, even though the stock is still off from its previous major highs of 32, 32 and a half, which I think it tested in the month of January, end of February start. I think from there the stock had corrected back to its 22 mark, so it was a sharp 30% odd correction for Yes Bank. Now there could be a potential up move which could re-begin for the stock price. But the only concern which we're spotting on the charts for Yes Bank is the lack of volumes. So the volumes in the last time around when the stock moved to that 30 plus range was almost we'd seen volumes of more than 200 crores for the stock on the daily charts. Right now the volumes for the stock is just about some 25 to 30 odd crores as an average volume. So unless the volumes pick up, we could probably see more of a very short-lived momentum, short-lived up move. But if the volumes pick up over the next consecutive days for a couple of days more at least, then we could see a potential breakout of a 32 plus mark.
Sandeep, on India Bulls Real Estate, the stock has already risen up 87 odd percent in the last 52 weeks, and I think 56, 67 odd percent so far this year. But the bookings for the fourth quarter have seen a sharp downtick of 64%. The collections as well have been much lower. Should there be a decline in the stock today, and a significant one, having its high beta nature, do you think it should be bought into?
Not tracking at all.
Okay, fair enough. That's the take on India Bulls, not tracking it right now at least. Couple of other buzzers from last week, and look out for what IREDA as well does. It's got a Navratna status right now. Of course, this is one of those case studies kind of stocks, the kind of move that it's had, not just with its IPO subscription, but the bump up it has had from its listing day as well. For some of these stories, Sandeep, is the best behind us, IREDA in specific?
It's very tough to say whether best is behind because in many of these PSU segments, for example, even now, if you look at the announcements which are coming from the government on various initiatives to invest in renewable energy or railways, etc. So many of these stocks have gone up so much, but then the visibility of growth might be also significant. So it's very tough to take a call on these stocks when they have had such a frenzied rise.
Right.
Like I would not buy them at this stage, but then
Okay.
it's very tough to say that you should sell it.
Don't sell perhaps, but don't buy clearly. That's the verdict coming in. Thanks, Sandip, for joining us today. But shifting focus to
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.